Welcome to today's Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here because, honestly, we're going to look at one of the most dynamic, structurally fascinating organs in all of human biology. We are exploring the uterus. But instead of just looking at this like a standard, dry anatomy textbook, I want you to think of it more like a masterclass in architecture and interior design. Imagine a house that doesn't just sit there, but actively anticipates a new guest every single month. It completely renovates its interior rooms, and eventually it'll transform its very foundation if that guest actually decides to stay. It is literally a shape-shifting marvel of female reproductive biology, and today we are going to tour it room by room.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our architectural blueprint for today's journey. 1. The architecture. 2. The walls. 3. The monthly renovation. And 4. The crossroads.
To get us in the right mindset, think about this for a second. What human organ completely rebuilds its interior every single month? Think about the massive energy and precision required to tear down and rebuild a complex, highly vascular tissue structure continuously. There's really nothing else quite like it. It's the ultimate biological riddle, and it perfectly sets up the core room renovation analogy we're going to use today to kind of demystify the mechanics of human reproduction.
All right, Section 1, the architecture, meaning the anatomy.
So, the baseline dimensions of a non-pregnant uterus are surprisingly compact. It's shaped sort of like an inverted pear, and it measures roughly 7.5 centimeters long, 5 centimeters wide, and just 2.5 centimeters thick. Pretty small, right? But here's the thing. This is no rigid brick-and-mortar building. The uterus is an incredibly distensible organ. When a pregnancy occurs, this compact little structure has the capacity to expand its size up to 500 times to accommodate a growing fetus. 500 times! It's an architectural feat that human engineers can really only dream of.
And this brilliantly illustrates how we could divide the uterus into 3 main structural zones. First up, you have the fundus. This is the expansive, dome-shaped upper roof where the fallopian tubes open to actually deliver the egg. Below that is the body, which is the main, expansive living room where an embryo would implant and grow. But then, contrasting sharply with those wide-open upper spaces, we have the cervix down at the bottom. This is the narrow, gatekeeping foundation that connects the main body to the vaginal canal.
Now, you might be wondering about that narrow foundation. It is doing some very heavy lifting. The cervix contains 2 muscular rings, or sphincters, the internal os, which communicates with the uterus, and the external os, which communicates with the vagina. Why are they so important? Well, because these are arguably the strongest sphincters in the entire human body. Think of them as reinforced security doors. If a fetus is growing in the body of the uterus, it's constantly pulling down due to gravity, right? These sphincters absolutely must lock tight to support that growing weight and prevent a premature birth or a miscarriage. They literally only relax when it is time for delivery.
Moving inward, let's hit Section 2. The walls, or the tissue layers.
If you were to take a cross-section of the uterine wall, you'd find 3 highly specialized layers working from the perimeter inward. First up, the perimetrium. This is the outer protective shield, and it's made of a double-layered membrane and loose connective tissue. Next is the myometrium. Now, myo means muscle, so this middle layer is just packed with smooth muscle fibers running in circular, longitudinal, and even oblique directions. This is the powerhouse. It provides the intense contraction force needed during childbirth. Finally, we reach the innermost layer, the endometrium. This is the highly glandular, incredibly vascular interior decor of our house. It is super rich in blood vessels, and, crucially, it's the specific layer responsible for all the cyclical changes we are about to discuss.
Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds. The monthly renovation, tracking the cycle itself.
Following the timeline of our monthly renovation project, it all kicks off with ovulation, which is when an egg is released from the ovary. But the ovary doesn't just release an egg. It starts pumping out a crucial hormone called progesterone. Now think of progesterone as the project manager for our house. This invisible chemical signal directly triggers a massive, highly visible structural upgrade to the endometrium. That inner wall becomes lush, thick, and just incredibly rich in blood vessels. It's preparing the perfect, welcoming environment for a fertilized egg to settle into.
But what happens if the guest doesn't arrive? If there's no fertilization, well, there's no need for this elaborate setup. The project manager essentially leaves the site, meaning the progesterone level drops. And without progesterone there to maintain the structure, the temporary renovations begin to fail. The thick, vascular endometrium loses its structural integrity, it breaks down, and it's shed right along with the unfertilized egg. This breakdown exits the body as menses, effectively clearing the site so a completely fresh renovation can begin the very next month.
Which brings us to Section 4,
The crossroads, looking at the two very different outcomes. So the crucial point is what happens to this meticulous monthly preparation if fertilization and implantation actually do occur? Well, if a fertilized embryo travels down the fallopian tube and successfully implants into that lush inner wall, the whole game changes. Step 2, the progesterone levels do not drop, they lock in and stay high. And because of this continuous hormonal support, step 3 happens. The standard inner lining undergoes the ultimate structural upgrade. In fact, we no longer even call it the endometrium. It transforms into a highly specialized protective life support system known as the decidua.
The decidua is so fascinating because it basically organizes itself into 3 distinct new layers wrapped right around the developing embryo. First, the decidual parietalis lines the outer wall of the main uterine cavity. Then, right at the base where the embryo implanted, we have the decidua basalis. This is the absolutely crucial layer that will interact with fetal tissues to actually form the placenta, providing all that vital nutrition. Finally, the decidua capsularis forms a protective capsule that completely covers the growing embryo. But here's the coolest part. Beyond just structural support, this intricate decidual wrapping serves an amazing clinical function. It acts as an immunological cloak, crucially protecting the foreign genetics of the developing embryo from being attacked by the mother's own immune system. Pretty incredible, right?
From a compact, muscular frame to an expansive life support system, the structural journey of this organ is truly breathtaking. Given its incredible ability to physically rebuild its interior lining every single month and entirely transform its tissue architecture upon implantation, how does understanding the mechanics of the uterus demystify human reproduction for you? It is definitely not just a passive container. It's an active, hormone-driven, highly engineered environment. I really hope this structured look at the anatomy, those tissue walls, and the monthly renovation cycle has left you with a profound appreciation for this shape-shifting marvel and maybe sparked your curiosity to learn even more about the amazing biology that builds us. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.